The affidavit is the document filed with the court weeks before they ask for the search warrant to say to the court, hey, we're going to ask you for a search warrant, and this is why. The court reads it and can basically say, forget about it, or you better come in here right away, which is what this judge did. So probably 2 or 3 FBI agents, we know at least 2 U.S. attorneys were there, one from D.C., one from Miami. And we know that the federal judge swore in the FBI agent who signed the affidavit and questioned him about it. And at the end of the questioning, the judge agreed that a crime was committed, not necessarily that Donald Trump committed the crime, but a crime was committed, and that it is more likely than not that evidence of that crime exists on Trump's property. The purpose of the affidavit and the Q&A is to demonstrate probable cause that a crime was committed, probable cause that evidence of the crime exists in the place to be searched and the person or thing to be seized. I'm quoting from the Fourth Amendment. The judge must agree with those conclusions in order to sign the warrant. He did. The warrant also states, and this is typical, but we know it for a fact because the warrant was released, not the affidavit, the warrant, what charges they have that they plan to bring against President Trump or that they are investigating whether or not he committed. The charges are under the Espionage Act of 1917, which I have argued many times, and as recently as in my op-ed piece at LouRockwell.com of yesterday, that the Espionage Act is unconstitutional. I've also argued that all federal crimes but two are unconstitutional. How many federal crimes are there? Well, nobody knows exactly. The estimates are between 4,400 and 5,500. The Constitution only authorizes a set of crimes aimed at treason and a set of crimes aimed at debasing the money supply. Those are the only 2 federal crimes that the Constitution contemplates. All other crimes were intended by the Constitution to be state crimes. Trump, in one of his many misguided moments, said under the Espionage Act, which his Department of Justice sought and obtained an indictment against Edward Snowden, a genuine and American hero, that Snowden should be executed under the Espionage Act. Guess what? Trump is charged or about to be charged with violating the very same sections of the Espionage Act that a grand jury, pursuant to the requests of the Trump DOJ, has indicted Snowden for. Incredible. And by the way, Mr. Former President Trump, there's no death penalty involved in the Espionage Act. There was when the Rosenbergs were convicted of it, but there isn't anymore. So look, I think he's going to be indicted. He's going to be indicted not because classified documents sitting in his safe hurt anyone, cause any crime. They only bruise the egos of the deep state. The deep state who he tricked into taking their documents and putting in his home. That infuriates them. But if you define crime, and this is a standard definition for crime in the Western world, harm intentionally caused and proscribed by statute or by nature, who's harmed by these documents sitting in Trump's safe? Just the egos of the deep state. Deep state, the national security state with their 3-letter acronyms, FBI, CIA, DEA. One of them has 4, BATF. None of these things are recognized under the Constitution. They're all created by the federal government, by the sheer force of its own will. And they're supposedly created to keep us safe. They have done more damage to personal liberty than the people they have pursued.
So it sounds as if you have some insight as to what was actually taken when Trump left the White House. Do you know?
No, I don't know. I only know what is public knowledge. And the brief history is the National Archives went through the White House within days of Joe and Jill Biden arriving there, and they couldn't find thousands of documents. Somehow they know that the documents exist. I'm not sure what their system is for knowing that. They reached out to Trump. He said, yeah, I got a lot of boxes here. He sent back 15 boxes. They demanded more. He told them to take a hike. They called in the DOJ. The DOJ demanded more. He told them to take a hike. The DOJ summoned a grand jury. Now, grand juries only do one thing. They investigate whether or not crimes were committed. The grand jury sent a subpoena to Trump. As you may or may not know, and subpoenas are negotiable. So you get a lawyer who sits down with the government lawyer who's presenting evidence to the grand jury, and you negotiate, which is what Trump's lawyers did at Mar-a-Lago with federal prosecutors in a conference room at Mar-a-Lago. Trump himself walked in. This never happened, as far as I know before. Trump himself walked into the middle of the negotiations and patted everybody in the back and shook their hands and then left. At the end of the negotiations, Trump's people agreed to cough up more documents. At the end of that, one of Trump's in-house lawyers wrote a letter saying, you have everything subject to the subpoena. Then an informant, either an FBI agent, whom the Trump people, unknowing that he was an FBI agent or that she was an FBI agent, hired, or somebody working at Mar-a-Lago who decided to call the FBI, said, by the way, there's top secret SCI, I'll tell you what that means in a minute, in the former president's safe. That's when the FBI prepared the affidavit, went to the federal judge, he signed the search warrant, 50 FBI agents showed up unarmed. You have never heard of 50 FBI agents in one place where only one of them, the head of them, was armed. The other 50 had to leave their guns back. They did it as a courtesy to Trump because that place is protected by dozens of Secret Service agents. They called the Secret Service, said, we're coming over for what? For this. They faxed the warrant. Okay, come. We can't help you search, but we'll make sure nobody knows about it. We'll keep the press out. We'll open the doors. We'll open cabinets. You won't have to break anything. Only one person had the combination to the safe. He was in New Jersey, Donald Trump. So they broke into the safe, and that's where they found top secret SCI. So there are 6 categories of secret. The lowest is confidential. The second highest is top secret. The absolute highest is top secret SCI. SCI means it can only exist and be examined in a federal SCIF through which Wi-Fi won't go, in which mobile devices won't work, and from which surveillance cannot be extracted. Now, how those things ended up in his safe, nobody knows. Even if he did declassify them, they still contain secrets, the very possession of which is a violation, you guessed it, of the Espionage Act of 1917. Then the news media, my former employers, Fox News among them, made an application to the court, which has the affidavit, to reveal it. So this was not DOJ versus Trump. This was ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, etc., versus the DOJ. And the court said, I'm going to cut the baby in half. I'm going to release the affidavit, but only part of it. You white out proper names and identifiers. The federal prosecutor said, if we do that, the affidavit, what that's remaining, will be meaningless. All right, give it a try. I'll give you a week to try. So now negotiations are going on between the DOJ and the judge over what's to be redacted. That's where we stand now. Joe Biden could have reclassified what Donald Trump declassified, thereby making the potential crimes chargeable against the former president far more serious, almost Rosenberg-like, if these things are nuclear secrets and he has them in his home. That's where we stand right now. I have predicted, and I've said this before on air and in my LouRockwell.com piece, that the former president, Donald Trump, will soon be indicted. He is the victim of the security state. He knows this. He's the former president. The security state, law enforcement, and intel tormented him for 4 years. They are still after him.